This is a fictional American romance story created using AI for entertainment purposes only, intended strictly for audiences 18 years and older and not suitable for children under 18.
The airplane descended slowly through a blanket of gray Texas clouds, and Daniel Harper pressed his forehead against the cold oval window. Houston looked small from the sky, patches of highways weaving between endless suburbs and strips of glittering office towers. Somewhere down there was the house he had paid for, the life he was supposed to be living. 6 weeks offshore always did something strange to him. Time on the oil platform stretched and compressed all at once. Long shifts, mechanical noise, the endless rhythm of waves against steel. Men talked about football, money, and wives they barely saw. And then suddenly it ended. You flew home and stepped back into a life that had kept moving without you. Daniel checked his phone as the plane taxied. 3 unread messages from Emily. Landed yet? Lucas wants to stay up until you get home. Drive safe. We missed you. He smiled faintly. Emily always knew how to say the right things. The suburban street was quiet when Daniel pulled into the driveway 2 hours later. The porch light was on. The house looked exactly the same as when he'd left it. 2-story brick, white shutters, the basketball hoop Lucas had insisted on installing even though he could barely reach the rim. Inside, the front door opened before Daniel even reached it. "Daddy!" Lucas launched himself forward like a small rocket. Daniel laughed as the boy collided with him. "Whoa, easy there, buddy." Lucas wrapped his arms tightly around Daniel's waist, pressing his face into his jacket. For a moment, Daniel felt something strange. The hug lasted longer than usual. "You grow another inch while I was gone?" Daniel asked. Lucas shook his head but didn't let go. From the hallway, Emily appeared. She wore loose gray sweatpants and one of Daniel's old college t-shirts. Her brown hair was tied into a messy bun. She looked beautiful, but tired. "There you are," she said softly. Daniel stepped forward and kissed her. It was warm, familiar, yet somehow brief. "I made dinner," she said. "Well, reheated dinner." "Perfect." Lucas tugged his hand. "Dad, you gotta see my science project." "Can I at least take my shoes off first?" "No," Daniel laughed. Emily smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Later that night, after Lucas finally fell asleep on the couch mid-sentence about volcano experiments, Daniel carried him upstairs. The boy stirred slightly. "Dad?" "Yeah?" Lucas whispered something into his shoulder. Daniel couldn't quite hear it. "What was that?" Lucas hesitated. Then he shook his head. "Nothing." Daniel laid him gently in bed and turned off the light. Downstairs, Emily sat scrolling through her phone. The living room glowed softly from the television. Daniel poured himself a glass of bourbon. "Were busy while I was gone?" he asked. Emily shrugged. "Same as always. Clients changing their minds about paint colors." He chuckled. "Life or death stuff." She smiled politely, but her phone buzzed. Just once. Emily flipped it face down on the coffee table a little too quickly. Daniel noticed. Not because he was suspicious, just because after 12 years of marriage you noticed everything. "Who's texting this late?" he asked casually. "Oh, just one of the girls from yoga." "Yoga, huh?" "Yeah, I've been going a lot lately." "That's good." Another silence settled between them. The kind that shouldn't exist between two people who once stayed up all night talking in cheap apartments. Daniel took a sip of bourbon. Emily glanced toward the hallway where Lucas slept. "Hey," she said quietly. "Did he seem different to you?" "Lucas?" "Yeah." Daniel thought about the long hug, the whisper. "Maybe he just missed me." Emily nodded. "Yeah, maybe." But her fingers were already reaching for the phone again. The screen lit her face in pale blue. Daniel looked away. Outside, somewhere down the street, thunder rolled across the dark Texas sky. And inside the Harper house, something invisible had already begun to shift. Morning in the Harper house arrived with the soft hum of the coffee machine and the distant rumble of Houston traffic beginning its daily crawl along Interstate 10. Daniel walked before everyone else. It was a habit drilled into him by years of offshore schedules, 4:30 alarms, steel staircases vibrating beneath heavy boots, the smell of diesel and salt water in the air. Here, the quiet suburban kitchen felt almost unreal. He stood by the counter in sweatpants, pouring black coffee into a chipped mug that read "World's Okayest Dad," a Father's Day gift from Lucas 3 years earlier. Through the large kitchen window, he watched the sun crawl slowly over the roofs of identical houses. Somewhere a lawn sprinkler clicked rhythmically. He should have felt peaceful. Instead, there was a strange weight in his chest he couldn't quite name. Upstairs, a door opened. Emily came down the stairs, already dressed. That was the first small thing. Usually Emily lingered in the mornings, barefoot, messy hair, complaining about how early Lucas's school bus came. But today she looked like she had somewhere important to be. She wore fitted black leggings, a white athletic top, and a light denim jacket Daniel didn't recognize. Her hair was brushed neatly over her shoulders. "You're up early," Daniel said. "Yoga class." She grabbed a glass from the cabinet. "What time?" 7. Daniel checked the microwave clock. 6:12. "You used to go in the evenings." Emily shrugged lightly. "They added morning sessions." Her voice sounded casual, practiced. She kissed his cheek quickly, grabbed her phone and car keys, and was halfway to the door before Daniel even finished his first sip of coffee. "Hey," he said. She paused. "Yeah? When did you get that jacket?" Emily glanced down at it. "Oh, this? Yeah, Target," she smiled. "Everything's from Target, Daniel." Then she was gone. The front door closed with a soft click. Daniel stood alone in the kitchen. It wasn't suspicion, not yet, just a note slightly off key in a song he knew by heart. Lucas shuffled downstairs 20 minutes later in dinosaur pajamas. His hair stuck up like he had wrestled a tornado in his sleep. "Where's Mom?" he asked. "Yoga." Lucas nodded like this was normal. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You knew about that?" "Yeah." Lucas climbed onto a chair and reached for the cereal box. "She goes a lot." "How long?" Lucas shrugged. "A while." "How long is a while?" "Since the winter, I think." Daniel poured milk slowly. "That was 3 months." Funny how things could happen in your own house without you noticing. "You like her yoga friends?" Daniel asked casually. Lucas crunched cereal thoughtfully. "They're okay." "They?" "Sometimes they come over." Daniel leaned against the counter. "Oh yeah?" "Yeah." "What do they do?" Lucas shrugged again. "Talk?" "About yoga?" "I guess." Daniel smiled. Kids always answered questions in circles. "You remember any of their names?" Lucas thought hard. "There's Jenna." "Okay." "And Melissa." Daniel nodded. "Anyone else?" Lucas hesitated. Then he said something that barely registered at first. "And Ryan." Daniel paused. "Ryan?" "Yeah, Mom's yoga friend." Lucas nodded casually, spoon halfway to his mouth. "He's funny." "Oh yeah?" "Yeah, he showed me this trick with a basketball where you spin it on your finger." Daniel chuckled. "Sounds like a cool guy." Lucas nodded. "He's really tall." "Does he come over a lot?" The boy shrugged. "Sometimes." "How often?" Lucas didn't answer right away. He stared into his cereal bowl like he was trying to count floating marshmallows. "Mostly when you're at work." Daniel felt a tiny, almost imperceptible tightening in his chest, but he forced a smile. "Well," he said lightly, "someone's got to keep you entertained while I'm gone." Lucas smiled too. "Yeah." Then he added, without any weight or awareness, "Sometimes he stays really late." By the afternoon, Daniel had convinced himself he was being ridiculous. People had friends. Emily had always been social, and Daniel had been gone a lot lately. 6 weeks offshore, 2 weeks home, repeat. That wasn't exactly a recipe for an exciting marriage. He spent the afternoon helping Lucas assemble a cardboard volcano for his science project. They covered the kitchen counter with glue, baking soda, and red food coloring. When Emily came home around 4, she paused in the doorway. Her eyes moved across the chaos. Flour on the floor, Lucas wearing safety goggles for no reason, Daniel laughing while holding a measuring cup like a scientist. For a moment, something softened in her face. "You two look dangerous." Lucas grinned. "We're making lava." Emily set her bag down slowly. Daniel noticed something else then. A new purse. Leather. Definitely not from Target. "You hungry?" she asked. "Always," Daniel said. She walked into the kitchen, leaning slightly to kiss Lucas's head. Then she kissed Daniel again. It was warm, but quick. Too quick. Her phone buzzed in her purse. Once, then again. Emily's body stiffened almost invisibly. "I'll get that," she said quickly. She stepped into the hallway. Daniel watched her go. Through the reflection in the microwave door, he could see her silhouette. Her back turned. Her head lowered slightly as she read the message. Then something happened. A tiny smile. It flickered across her lips before disappearing. When she returned to the kitchen, she looked normal again. Almost. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked. "Yeah," she said lightly. "Just Melissa asking about tomorrow's class." Daniel nodded. "Cool." He turned back to the volcano. But something about the timing of that smile stayed in his mind, like a photograph he hadn't meant to take. Later that night, after Lucas was asleep again, Daniel walked past the laundry room. Emily's gym bag sat open on the dryer. Inside was a neatly folded towel, a water bottle, and a man's grey hoodie. Daniel stopped. He picked it up slowly. It smelled faintly of cologne, not his. He stared at it for several seconds. Then Emily's voice came from the hallway. "Oh, I forgot that was in there." Daniel turned. She stood leaning against the wall. Too casual. "That's Ryan's," she added quickly. "He left it after class." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "At yoga?" She laughed. "Relax. We grabbed coffee after class once. He left it in my car." Daniel studied her face. Then he handed it back. "Tell him he's lucky you didn't throw it away." Emily smiled. But when she took the hoodie from his hands, her fingers trembled just slightly. And Daniel felt that same strange weight again. Not suspicion. Not yet. Just a growing collection of small things. Little pieces that didn't quite fit together. Like the early tremors before an earthquake. By the third day back home, Daniel Harper had settled into the strange rhythm of being a visitor in his own life. It always happened after long rotations offshore. The house continued functioning while he was gone, developing its own routines, its own quiet habits. When he returned, it felt like stepping into a play already halfway through. You knew your lines, but the timing was off. Wednesday afternoon found Daniel standing in the driveway, wiping down the hood of his pickup truck, while Lucas practiced dribbling a basketball nearby. The Texas sun hung low but warm, bathing the neighborhood in a soft amber glow. Lawnmowers hummed in the distance. Somewhere a dog barked lazily. Lucas bounced the ball clumsily between his legs. "Like this, Dad." The ball rolled away. Daniel chuckled. "Almost, champ." Lucas chased it toward the curb, where their neighbor Mrs. Carver was watering her roses. She was a retired schoolteacher who had lived on the street longer than anyone else, and knew everything about everyone. Lucas waved enthusiastically. "Hi, Mrs. Carver." "Well, hello there, young man," she called back warmly. Daniel walked over, drying his hands with a rag. "Afternoon." "Daniel," she said brightly. "Back from the ocean again?" "Something like that." "You must miss your family terribly out there." "Every day." She gave him a sympathetic smile. "Well, Emily's been keeping busy." Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. "Oh yeah?" "Oh yes," Mrs. Carver said, trimming a rose stem. "Always coming and going. Yoga classes, coffee with friends, very social these days." Daniel nodded politely. Emily had mentioned yoga. That much was true. But then Mrs. Carver added something casually, almost as an afterthought. "That tall fellow seems nice, though." Daniel looked up. "Tall fellow?" "Yes, the one with the dark hair." She gestured vaguely toward the street. "Drives that white Jeep sometimes." Lucas's basketball bounced once between them. Daniel felt a faint shift in his chest. "You mean Ryan?" Lucas said suddenly. Mrs. Carver snapped her fingers. "That's it, Ryan." Daniel kept his voice even. "You've met him?" "Oh, not properly," she said. "But I've seen him a few times where he comes by to pick Emily up. Very handsome young man." Lucas nodded enthusiastically. "He's super tall." Mrs. Carver laughed. "Well, he certainly is." Daniel forced a smile. "Good to know." Lucas dribbled the ball again. "Ryan can spin it on his finger." Mrs. Carver smiled kindly. "I'm sure he can." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "Guess I'll have to meet the guy sometime." "Oh, I'm surprised you haven't already," she replied casually. Then she returned to watering her roses. But the comment lingered in the warm air. "I'm surprised you haven't already." That evening, Daniel sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone. Emily moved around the kitchen preparing dinner. Chicken sizzling in a pan, garlic and butter filling the room. Lucas colored dinosaurs at the table. Daniel typed slowly into Google. Ryan Caldwell, Houston, yoga. Several results appeared. The first was an Instagram profile. Daniel hesitated for a second. Then he opened it. The screen filled with images. Ryan Caldwell was exactly what you'd expect a yoga instructor in Houston to look like. Tall, athletic, dark hair slightly messy. A confident smile that seemed permanently fixed on his face. Photo after photo showed him in yoga studios, outdoor fitness events, beach runs, charity marathons. Thousands of followers. Daniel scrolled further. Then he saw one that made him pause. A group photo outside the yoga studio. Emily stood near the edge of the frame. She looked relaxed, laughing. Ryan stood beside her, his arm resting casually around her shoulders. Daniel stared at the image for a long moment. "Dinner's ready," Emily said. He locked the phone. Later that night, they sat on the couch together. Lucas had gone to bed after insisting his volcano absolutely needed more glitter. The living room lights were low. Emily curled her legs beneath her while scrolling through her phone. Daniel held the glass of bourbon. He watched her for a moment. Then he asked quietly, "So who's Ryan?" Emily looked up, just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Her eyes flickered. "Oh," she said lightly. "Did Lucas mention him?" "Yeah." She set her phone down. "He's the yoga instructor." Daniel nodded slowly. "Mrs. Carver seems to know him too." Emily rolled her eyes. "Of course she does. She said he picks you up sometimes." Emily sighed. "It's not a big deal, Daniel." Her tone sharpened slightly. "We grab coffee after class sometimes with the group." "Group?" "Yes, group." Daniel took a sip of bourbon. "I saw the Instagram photo." Emily looked toward him again. "What photo?" "The one outside the yoga studio." "Oh," her shoulders relaxed. "That, yeah, that." She leaned back against the couch. "Daniel, he's just a friend." The words hung in the room. Just a friend? Daniel studied the face carefully. People who tell the truth usually don't blink as much. Emily blinked twice. "Lucas seems to like him," Daniel said. "Well, he's good with kids." "That's nice." Another silence followed, the kind that made the air feel heavier. Finally, Emily spoke again. "You're not seriously jealous of a yoga instructor, are you?" Daniel laughed softly. "Of course not." He finished the bourbon and set the glass down. But as Emily reached for her phone again, Daniel noticed something else. Her screen lit briefly. A notification banner appeared. "Ryan C." Just 2 words in the preview. "Miss you." Emily flipped the phone over instantly, but Daniel had already seen it. Neither of them mentioned it. Outside, the night in Houston stretched quiet and humid. Inside the Harper house, something invisible had taken another step forward. Still not an earthquake. Not yet. But the ground beneath Daniel Harper's life had begun to tremble. And somewhere in the distance, the name Ryan Caldwell had just become impossible to ignore. The rain started just after sunset. In Houston, storms didn't arrive politely. They rolled in heavy and sudden, like someone had flipped a switch in the sky. One moment the evening air was thick and quiet. The next, thunder cracked across the suburbs and sheets of rain hammered the rooftops. Daniel stood in the kitchen rinsing dishes when the first flash of lightning lit up the backyard. Lucas sat at the dining table surrounded by colored pencils and construction paper. His science project volcano had already erupted twice that week, leaving faint pink stains on the kitchen counter from baking soda and food coloring. Emily had gone out 20 minutes earlier. "Yoga class," she'd said. Daniel had simply nodded. The rain grew louder against the windows. Lucas looked up from his drawing. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy." "Did it rain on the ocean when you were working?" Daniel smiled faintly. "All the time." "Were you scared?" "Sometimes." Lucas considered that. "But you're big," he said. Daniel chuckled. "Big people get scared too." Lucas returned to coloring. For a while, the only sounds in the room were rain, distant thunder, and the soft scratching of crayons against paper. Then Lucas spoke again. "Ryan isn't scared of storms." Daniel didn't react at first. "Ryan?" "Yeah." Daniel dried his hands slowly. "The yoga guy?" Lucas nodded, still drawing. "He says storms are relaxing." Daniel leaned against the counter. "That so?" "Yeah." Lucas held up his picture. It was a drawing of their house under dark clouds, with lightning zigzagging across the sky. 2 stick figures stood in the yard. One tall, one small. Daniel walked over. "Who's that?" "That's me." "And the tall one?" Lucas said it like it was obvious. "Ryan." Daniel felt something tighten inside his chest. "Where's Mom in the picture?" Lucas shrugged. "She's inside." Daniel forced a small smile. "Looks like a good storm." Lucas grinned. "Ryan says thunder is just clouds bumping into each other." Daniel chuckled. "That's one way to explain it." Lucas went back to coloring. Another long pause passed. Then Daniel asked the question casually, almost lazily. So, when do you see Ryan? Lucas didn't even look up. Sometimes. Like when? When mom has yoga. Daniel frowned slightly. I thought Ryan was the yoga teacher. He is. So how do you see him here? Lucas answered without hesitation. He comes over after. Daniel's heart skipped once. After yoga? Yeah. And what do you guys do? Lucas shrugged again. Sometimes we watch movies. Sometimes he helps me shoot basketball. Daniel kept his voice steady. Your mom invites him over? Yeah. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows. Daniel walked to the fridge and poured himself a glass of water. His hand moved slower than usual. When does he leave? He asked. Lucas paused for a moment. Then he said something that changed everything. Sometimes he doesn't. Daniel turned slowly. What do you mean? Lucas looked confused by the question. He stays. Late? Lucas nodded. Really late. Daniel felt the air in the room shift. How late? Lucas shrugged. Like all night sometimes. The glass in Daniel's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. What do you mean all night? Lucas blinked. You know. Daniel didn't know. Or maybe he did. But he needed the words. Where does he sleep? Lucas pointed casually toward the hallway. In mom's room. The thunder outside cracked loudly, rattling the windows. Daniel didn't move. For a moment, the entire world seemed to narrow into a thin ringing silence. Lucas, Daniel said quietly. Yeah? Does Ryan sleep there when I'm gone? Lucas nodded. Sometimes. Does mom say he can? Yeah. Daniel swallowed slowly. The room suddenly felt colder. Does anyone else know about this? Lucas frowned, thinking. I don't think so. Did mom say not to tell me? The boy hesitated. Just a little. Then he shook his head. No. Daniel watched him carefully. Are you sure? Lucas looked down at his drawing. His voice became softer. Mom said it wasn't important. Daniel felt something inside him crack open. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet fracture running through years of trust. How long has Ryan been staying over? Daniel asked gently. Lucas counted silently on his fingers. I don't know, since winter maybe? Winter. 3 months. Daniel's mind began rearranging memories. Phone calls, yoga classes, late nights, the hoodie, the Instagram photo. All the small things. All the pieces that hadn't quite fit. Now they did. Lucas suddenly looked worried. Did I say something bad? Daniel forced a smile. No, buddy. You're not mad? Daniel knelt beside him. Of course not. Lucas studied his father's face carefully. Kids had a strange ability to detect emotional earthquakes adults tried to hide. You look weird, Lucas said. Daniel laughed quietly. Just tired. Lucas seemed satisfied with that answer. He returned to coloring the storm clouds darker. After a moment, he added another detail to the drawing. A third stick figure standing near the house. Daniel noticed. Who's that one? Lucas looked up. That's Mom. The 3 figures stood in the rain together. A small family picture drawn in crayon. Except one of them wasn't supposed to be there. Daniel stared at it for a long moment. Outside, lightning flashed again. Lucas yawned. I'm sleepy. Let's get you to bed. Daniel tucked him in 10 minutes later. Lucas curled under the blanket. Dad? Yeah? Ryan's nice. Daniel nodded slowly. I'm sure he is. Mom laughs a lot when he's here. Daniel felt something twist deep in his chest. Get some sleep, okay? Lucas closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was breathing softly. Daniel turned off the light and stepped into the hallway. The house was quiet. The rain had softened into a steady whisper against the roof. Downstairs, Daniel stood alone in the dark living room. The clock on the wall ticked slowly. 9:47 p.m. Emily still wasn't home. Daniel walked to the kitchen counter. Lucas's drawing was still there. 3 stick figures under a storm. He stared at it for a long time. Then he folded the paper once and set it beside his empty glass. For the first time since returning home, Daniel Harper understood something with absolute clarity. The ground beneath his life hadn't just trembled, it had already broken. He just hadn't seen the fault line before. And somewhere out there in the rainy Houston night, Ryan Caldwell was still moving freely through the pieces of Daniel's family. The house was quiet when Emily finally came home. Daniel heard the car pull into the driveway just after 10:30. The garage door rumbled open, then closed again with a dull metallic thud. He remained seated in the dark living room. Only the faint glow of the kitchen light spilled across the floor. Emily stepped inside, shaking rain from her hair. She paused when she saw him sitting there. "You're still up?" she asked. Her voice sounded normal, too normal. Dania shrugged slightly. "Couldn't sleep." She slipped off her sneakers and set her yoga bag by the wall. "You should try working offshore for 6 weeks," she said with a tired smile. "That will fix your sleep schedule." Danielle didn't answer. Emily walked into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. "Lucas asleep?" "Yeah." "How was he today?" "Good." Another silence stretched between them. Emily leaned against the counter and scrolled through her phone briefly before setting it down again. Danielle watched the small movement carefully. The device rested beside the sink, face up, unlocked, for just a moment. Then Emily picked it up again and slipped it into the pocket of her hoodie. Daniel stood. "I'm heading to bed," he said. "Okay." He paused halfway down the hallway. "Good night, Em." "Night." Her voice sounded distant. But Daniel didn't sleep. Midnight came slowly. The rain had stopped, leaving the neighborhood wrapped in damp silence. A distant car passed somewhere on the main road, tires hissing against wet pavement. Emily fell asleep beside him quickly. Her breathing became slow and steady. Daniel lay awake staring at the ceiling. Lucas's words echoed quietly in his mind. "Sometimes he stays all night." Daniel turned his head slightly. Emily's phone rested on the nightstand beside her. The screen was dark. For 12 years, Daniel Harper had never once gone through his wife's phone. Not once. Trust had always been simple, natural, like breathing. But tonight something inside him had already crossed the line. Slowly, carefully, Daniel reached over and picked up the phone. His thumb hovered over the screen. It lit up instantly. No passcode. Emily had never used one before. For a moment, Daniel almost set it back down. Then he opened the messages. At first, nothing unusual. Friends, clients, yoga group chats. Then he saw it. Ryan C. His thumb hesitated. Then he opened the conversation. The thread stretched back months. Hundreds of messages. Daniel scrolled slowly. At first they were casual. Ryan, great class today. Emily, my legs are still shaking. Another day. Ryan, coffee after tomorrow's session. Emily, sure. Weeks passed in the messages. The tone changed gradually, like watching a tide slowly rise. Ryan, you look beautiful today. Emily, you say that to all your students. Ryan, only the ones I notice. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. He kept scrolling. A message from 3 months ago. The tone had shifted completely. Ryan, I hate seeing you leave so quickly after class. Emily, Lucas gets home from school. Ryan, bring him next time. I'd like to meet the kid who keeps stealing you away. Another message later that week. Emily, Daniel's leaving for another rotation tomorrow. A long pause. Then Ryan's reply. Ryan, so you'll be lonely again. Emily, I'm used to it. Daniel stared at that line for a long moment. Further down the thread, the messages became heavier, more personal. Ryan, you deserve someone who's actually here. Emily, Daniel works hard for us. Ryan, but who's there for you? Daniel exhaled slowly. His chest felt tight now. He kept reading. Then came the first message that made everything undeniable. 2 months ago, late at night. Emily, I shouldn't have kissed you. Ryan's reply arrived seconds later. Ryan, then why are you smiling right now? Daniel's grip tightened around the phone. He scrolled further. The messages turned intimate quickly after that. Plans, private jokes, late-night conversations, and then the first confirmation. Ryan, I can come by after Lucas falls asleep. Emily, are you sure? Ryan, I want to see you. Emily, just don't stay too late. Ryan replied with a winking emoji. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, but he forced himself to keep reading. As the months progressed, the messages told a story more clearly than Emily ever could. Daniel began to see the timeline of a slow emotional collapse. Between the flirtation and desire were fragments of something else. Loneliness, frustration, confessions Emily had never spoken aloud to him. One message stood out. Emily, sometimes it feels like I'm raising a child alone. Ryan's reply came almost instantly. Ryan, that's not fair to you. Emily, it's not his fault. His job just takes him away. Ryan, you deserve someone who stays. Daniel felt something inside him sink. Flashbacks formed in his mind as he read. Emily alone at night in the quiet house. Lucas asleep upstairs. The television glowing in an empty living room. Scrolling through social media, seeing other couples, other husbands home for dinner, other families intact. And then Ryan, charismatic, attentive, always present. Daniel scrolled to the most recent messages, just hours ago. Ryan, miss you already. Emily, you literally saw me 2 hours ago. Ryan, not long enough. Then one final message, sent earlier that evening. Ryan, same plan tomorrow night? Emily's reply sat beneath it, unanswered. Daniel locked the phone slowly and set it back on the nightstand. Emily stirred slightly but didn't wake. The room felt colder now. The truth was no longer suspicion. It wasn't rumors. It wasn't guesses. It was real. Documented in black and white text. Months of betrayal. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. In the faint light of the street lamp outside, Emily looked peaceful, almost innocent. He wondered if she remembered the first apartment they shared, a tiny place above a pizza shop in Austin. They had eaten cheap takeout on the floor because they couldn't afford furniture. Back then Emily used to laugh constantly. Back then she used to wait for him to come home. Daniel rubbed his face slowly. From the hallway came a soft sound, Lucas shifting in his sleep. A small child, unaware that the world he trusted had just quietly collapsed. Daniel looked back at Emily one last time. Then he whispered something so quietly it barely existed. Why? Emily didn't answer. She slept peacefully beside the wreckage. The storm arrived the following night. Houston storms had a way of building slowly, like tension before an argument. The sky turned the color of dull steel sometime in the late afternoon. The air grew heavy and electric, the kind that made tree leaves tremble before the first drop of rain even fell. Daniel had been quiet all day. Too quiet. He drove Lucas to school, helped him carry the volcano project inside, smiled at the teacher, waved goodbye like everything was normal. Then he came home and waited. Emily moved through the house cautiously that evening, as if she sensed something shifting beneath the surface, but couldn't quite see it yet. She cooked pasta for dinner. Daniel barely touched his plate. Lucas chatted about a spelling test and how his volcano had been the second coolest in class. Emily laughed at the right moments, but her eyes kept drifting toward Daniel. "You okay?" she asked once. "Yeah," he replied simply. One word, flat. Lucas didn't notice. Children rarely recognize storms until the thunder came. By 9:30, Lucas was asleep. The house fell into a quiet tension that pressed against the walls. Outside, thunder rumbled low across the sky. Daniel stood in the living room, staring through the window as the first raindrops began to fall. Emily sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The same position, the same posture, like every other night. Another buzz from her phone. She smiled slightly, then she typed something quickly. Daniel spoke without turning around. "Ryan says hi?" The room froze. Emily looked up slowly. "What?" Daniel turned. The storm outside cracked suddenly, lightning illuminating the room for a split second. "I said," Daniel repeated calmly, "Ryan says hi?" Emily's expression shifted instantly. Confusion, then recognition, then fear. "What are you talking about?" Daniel walked toward the coffee table and picked up his phone. He tapped the screen once and slid it across the table toward her. The screen showed a photo. A screenshot. Her messages with Ryan. Emily stared at it, her face drained of color. "You went through my phone," she whispered. Daniel let out a quiet laugh. "That's your first reaction? You invaded my privacy." "Privacy?" Daniel's voice rose slightly. "Is that what we're calling it?" Emily stood up abruptly. "You had no right." "No right?" Daniel snapped. Thunder exploded outside, rattling the windows. "For 3 months you've been sleeping with another man in my house." Emily's lips trembled. "You don't know that." Daniel stared at her. "Lucas does." The words landed like a slap. Emily froze completely. "What?" "He told me," Daniel said quietly. Her eyes widened. "What did he say?" "That Ryan sometimes stays the night." Silence filled the room. Rain hammered the roof now. Emily sank slowly back onto the couch. "Oh my God." Daniel's voice hardened. "Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too." She rubbed her face with both hands. "He wasn't supposed to." Wasn't supposed to what? Daniel demanded. Know, see, remember? Emily looked up at him with glassy eyes. It's not what you think. Daniel laughed bitterly. That's the oldest line in the book. It's complicated. No, Daniel said sharply. It's really not. Another flash of lightning cut across the sky. The room flickered white. Emily's voice broke. You were never here. The words shocked both of them. Daniel stared at her. What? You were always gone, she continued, tears forming now. 6 weeks here, 2 weeks home, then gone again. That's my job. I know, she shouted. Her voice cracked under the weight of months of buried frustration. But do you know what it's like here when you're gone? Daniel crossed his arms. Enlighten me. Emily stood again, pacing now. The house is empty. Lucas goes to bed, and it's just me and silence every night. That doesn't give you permission to cheat. I didn't plan it, her voice trembled. I met him at yoga. We talked. That's all it was at first. Daniel's jaw clenched. I read the messages. Emily stopped pacing. Her shoulders sagged. I was lonely, she whispered. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. So you replaced me. That's not fair. Oh really, he said coldly. You let another man sleep in our bed. Emily wiped tears from her cheeks. You think it was that simple? Yes, Daniel replied. Actually, I do. She shook her head slowly. You stopped seeing me years ago, Daniel. That's not true. You came home exhausted. You checked work emails. You slept. I was working to support this family. I know, she cried, but I needed a husband too. The words hung heavily in the air. Rain poured harder outside now, like the sky itself was collapsing. Daniel looked at her for a long time. Then he asked the question he had been avoiding. Do you love him? Emily didn't answer immediately. That hesitation hurt more than anything else. Finally she whispered, I don't know. Daniel closed his eyes. For a moment the entire world seemed to tilt. When he opened them again, his voice was quieter. Does he love you? Emily laughed weakly. I think he loves the idea of me. Another silence settled between them. Then Daniel said something softer. Lucas thinks he's nice. Emily's face crumpled. Oh God, did you think about him at all? Daniel asked. Every day. Then why bring Ryan here? Emily's voice broke. Because for a little while I didn't feel invisible anymore. The confession hung between them like smoke. Daniel stared at the woman he had loved for 12 years. She looked smaller now. Not evil, not cruel, just broken. But the damage remained. Finally Daniel stepped back toward the hallway. I can't look at you right now, Danielle. Not tonight. Thunder roared again outside. Emily stood alone in the living room as he walked away. For the first time since their marriage began, the Harper house felt like two separate worlds under the same roof. And somewhere inside those walls, a little boy slept peacefully, unaware that the storm outside was nothing compared to the one now tearing through his family. The storm lasted most of the night. By morning, the rain had faded into a grey mist that clung to the quiet streets of the neighborhood. Puddles filled the cracks in the driveway, and the trees in the yard dripped slowly, like the sky had exhausted itself. Inside the Harper house, the silence was heavier than the storm had been. Daniel hadn't slept. He sat at the kitchen table sometime around 6 in the morning, a cold cup of coffee in front of him that he had forgotten to drink. The events of the night before replayed in fragments through his mind. Emily's tears, her words, the messages on her phone. You stopped seeing me years ago. He didn't know if that was true, but the betrayal was. Footsteps creaked softly on the stairs. Lucas appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing his eyes. Dad? Daniel forced a small smile. Morning, buddy. Lucas shuffled over and climbed onto the chair across from him. Why are you up so early? Couldn't sleep. Lucas studied his father's face carefully. Children had a way of sensing emotional weather changes without fully understanding them. You look tired, Lucas said. Daniel chuckled faintly. Thanks for noticing. Lucas reached for the cereal box on the counter and poured himself a bowl. Milk splashed unevenly as he tried to aim. The kitchen filled with the quiet sounds of morning routines. For a moment, Daniel almost pretended everything was normal. Almost. But then he remembered something Emily had said the night before. He wasn't supposed to know. Daniel watched Lucas eat for a few seconds. Then he spoke gently. Hey, Lucas. Yeah? Can I ask you something? Lucas nodded. Sure. Daniel leaned forward slightly, keeping his voice calm. You remember when we talked about Ryan the other night? Lucas's spoon paused in the milk. Yeah? Daniel noticed the hesitation immediately. You said he sometimes stayed over. Lucas nodded slowly. Yeah? Daniel chose his next words carefully. Did your mom ever tell you not to tell me about that? Lucas stared down at his cereal bowl. A long silence passed. Lucas? The boy shifted in his seat. Then he whispered something so quietly, Daniel almost missed it. No. Daniel felt a brief flicker of relief, but then Lucas added another sentence. But Ryan did. Daniel's chest tightened instantly. What do you mean? Lucas looked uncomfortable now. His small shoulders pulled inward. He said it would make you mad. Daniel felt the room grow colder. Ryan told you that? Lucas nodded. Yeah. What exactly did he say? Lucas fidgeted with his spoon. He said it was just grown-up stuff. Daniel swallowed slowly. And he asked you not to tell me? Lucas nodded again. Yeah. The word landed like a stone. Daniel rubbed his hands together slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. When did he tell you that? Lucas thought for a moment. The first time he stayed over. Daniel felt something dark rise in his chest. How many times has he stayed here? Lucas shrugged helplessly. I don't know. More than 5? Lucas nodded. Probably. Daniel exhaled through his nose. Did Mom hear him say that to you? Lucas shook his head. No. Did you ever tell her? No. Why not? Lucas looked up finally, his eyes wide with worry, because Ryan said it was a secret. The word secret echoed painfully in Daniel's mind, a grown man asking an 8-year-old boy to keep secrets from his father. Daniel leaned back in his chair slowly, his hands clenched under the table. Lucas, he said gently, did Ryan ever make you feel uncomfortable? Lucas shook his head quickly. No, he's nice. What do you do when he's here? We watch movies. Sometimes we play basketball in the driveway. Does he ever go into Mom's room? Lucas nodded. After I go to bed. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, then Lucas spoke again, his voice suddenly small. Did I do something wrong? Daniel's eyes opened instantly. No. Lucas's lips trembled slightly. Ryan said it was okay. Daniel stood up and walked around the table. He knelt beside his son. Listen to me, okay? Lucas nodded nervously. You didn't do anything wrong, but I didn't tell you. That's not your job, Daniel said softly. Ryan shouldn't have asked you to keep secrets like that. Lucas looked confused. Why? Daniel struggled to find the right words. Because grown-ups shouldn't put kids in the middle of their problems. Lucas thought about that. Then his face suddenly crumpled. Tears filled his eyes. I didn't want you to be mad. Daniel's heart broke at the sight. I'm not mad at you, he said quickly. Lucas wiped his face with his sleeve. Ryan said, you might get angry if you knew. Daniel felt anger flare in his chest again. Not at Lucas, never at Lucas, but at the man who had involved his child in something so ugly. Daniel pulled Lucas into a hug. The boy clung to him tightly. I'm sorry, Lucas whispered. You don't need to be sorry. But Mom said it wasn't a big deal. Daniel felt another piece of his heart fracture quietly. He held his son for a long moment. Behind them, a floorboard creaked softly. Emily stood in the hallway. She had heard everything. Her face was pale. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks. Lucas noticed her first. Mom? Emily stepped forward slowly. Oh my God, she whispered. Daniel stood up. Their eyes met across the kitchen. No anger this time, just something worse. Devastation. You didn't know, Daniel said quietly. Emily shook her head weakly. I swear, I didn't know he told Lucas that. Lucas looked between them nervously. Emily knelt beside him, pulling him into her arms. I'm so sorry, she whispered into his hair. Lucas looked confused. Why? Emily couldn't answer. Daniel watched them both, and in that moment he understood something with painful clarity. The betrayal wasn't just between husband and wife anymore. Ryan Caldwell had crossed into something deeper. He had turned an innocent child into a keeper of adult secrets, and that realization burned far hotter than jealousy ever could. Outside, the gray morning light crept slowly across the kitchen floor. Inside the Harper house, the truth had finally revealed its cruelest shape. Not just a broken marriage, but a wound that had reached their son. 3 days later, Ryan Caldwell disappeared from Emily's life. Not dramatically, not with apologies or explanations, just silence. His number stopped responding. His Instagram profile remained active, but suddenly distant. New photos of sunrise yoga sessions, beach runs, motivational quotes about healing energy and letting go. Nothing that acknowledged the quiet wreckage left behind in a suburban house 20 miles away. Emily sent 2 messages. The first, "We need to talk." The second, hours later, "Please." Neither received a reply. Daniel saw them on the kitchen counter when Emily left her phone face up one morning. He didn't say anything. By then, silence had become the most common language between them. The Harper house still functioned. Breakfast was made. Lucas went to school. Laundry ran in the evenings. But something essential had changed. It felt like living in a house after a firewall still standing, furniture still in place, but the smell of smoke lingering in every room. Lucas noticed the quiet first. On Saturday morning, he sat cross-legged on the living room floor, building a Lego spaceship, while Daniel watched from the couch. "Is Mom mad at you?" Lucas asked suddenly. Daniel looked up from his coffee. "No." Lucas snapped 2 Lego pieces together thoughtfully. "Are you mad at Mom?" Daniel hesitated. "That's complicated." Lucas frowned. "What does complicated mean?" Daniel smiled faintly. "It means adults sometimes make mistakes." Lucas looked toward the kitchen where Emily stood staring blankly at the sink. "Like when I spilled juice on the couch?" Daniel chuckled softly. "Something like that." Lucas nodded, satisfied with the comparison. Children often simplified the world in ways adults could not. Emily had changed. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. She stopped going to yoga. The mat that used to sit by the door remained rolled up in the corner. Her phone no longer buzzed late at night, and the bright, energetic version of Emily that once filled the house seemed to have retreated somewhere deep inside her. One evening, Daniel found her sitting alone on the back porch. The Texas sky glowed orange as the sun sank behind rows of rooftops. She held a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Daniel stepped outside quietly. "You'll catch mosquitoes out here," he said. Emily gave a faint smile. "I deserve a few mosquito bites." Daniel leaned against the railing. For a while, neither of them spoke. The cicadas buzzed in the trees. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "He blocked me." Daniel wasn't surprised. "Ryan?" She nodded. "I guess once things got messy, I wasn't part of the fantasy anymore." Daniel looked out over the yard. The grass needed mowing. Lucas's basketball lay abandoned near the fence. Emily's voice trembled slightly. "I thought he cared about me." Daniel didn't respond. After a moment, she added quietly, "But I think he just liked the version of me that didn't have consequences." The words hung in the warm evening air. Daniel glanced at her. "You didn't just hurt me," he said softly. "I know, you hurt Lucas." Emily closed her eyes. "I know." Her voice cracked under the weight of it. "I will regret that for the rest of my life." Daniel believed her. That was the hardest part. If she had been cruel or selfish without remorse, anger would have been easier. But Emily looked like someone who had already begun serving her punishment. Weeks passed. Slowly, the Harper house found a fragile rhythm again. Daniel took Lucas to basketball practice. Emily helped with homework. Sometimes they even laughed at the same dinner table. But the laughter always felt cautious, like stepping on thin ice. One night after Lucas went to bed, Emily sat across from Daniel at the kitchen table. "I've been looking at apartments," she said quietly. Daniel looked up. "Why? Because maybe that's what you want." He studied her face carefully. "You think leaving fixes this?" "No." "Then why?" Emily swallowed. "Because I don't know how to stay if you hate me." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "I don't hate you." Emily blinked in surprise. "You don't?" "No," he paused. "But I don't trust you either." Her eyes filled with tears. "That's fair." Daniel rubbed his hands together slowly. "Trust. Such a small word for something that took years to build and seconds to break." "I keep thinking about something Lucas said," Daniel admitted. "What?" "That Ryan was nice." Emily looked down. "That hurts, doesn't it?" "Yeah," Daniel sighed. "But kids don't understand the whole picture." Emily whispered, "I wish I had thought about the whole picture." The kitchen clock ticked softly on the wall. Daniel finally asked the question that had lingered for weeks. "Do you want to fix this?" Emily looked up instantly. "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. But Daniel knew something important. Wanting and rebuilding were 2 very different things. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," he said. Emily nodded. "I understand, but I'm willing to try." Tears slid quietly down her cheeks. "That's more than I deserve." Daniel shook his head. "No." He glanced toward the hallway where Lucas slept. "That's what he deserves." Emily followed his gaze. Their son. The one innocent person caught in the middle of everything. Daniel spoke softly. "I don't know what our marriage will look like after this." Emily whispered, "Neither do I." "But maybe," Daniel continued, "we start with honesty." Emily nodded slowly. "No more secrets." "No more secrets," Daniel agreed. Outside, the night air drifted gently through the open window. The storm that had torn through their lives weeks earlier had long since passed. But the landscape it left behind was different now. Scarred, changed, still standing. And for the first time since everything broke apart, Daniel Harper allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, something new could grow in the place where the old illusion had collapsed. Not perfect, not easy, but real.